Ladies and gentlemen, it is October 20th, 2025, and on April 20th, 1987, in Rochester, New York, at Genesee Hospital, a little black baby entered the world. And the doctors looked over to my mom, Tammy, and they said, Tammy, what do you want to name this little black baby? And she said, David Kendrick Jr., it's your favorite Purple Heart veteran, baby. Bam! And today, what we're going to get into is my blog post on my blog from Psychology Today called Why Veterans Feel Addicted to Combat. So I have a blog on Psychology Today. It's called The Veterans Corner. And in this blog, I talk about mental health in the veteran community. And this blog post is called Why Veterans Feel Addicted to Combat. Combat is the itch that many veterans try to scratch when their career is over. Now, I'm going to get right into it. One of my favorite military movies is called The Hurt Locker. And this movie is about a veteran who is, he's a soldier in the Army, who is he's an EOD soldier, explosive ordnance detonation, I believe. That's the term for it. And what they do is they find bombs and they blow them up. And so if you've ever seen a guy at your local news station with the big suit on, with the big hat on, well, not hat, but the big headgear and stuff like that, and they sweat and trying to detonate a bomb, that's what they do. But he keeps getting deployed over and over and over. And through this movie, you see this soldier, he has a family, he starts a family, but he still goes back to deploy. And I believe it's because he's addicted to that combat. So I wrote this blog post because I was addicted to combat when I got back from Iraq in 2007 after I got injured. So I'm going to get into why we feel that way. So I'm going to go into my personal story because all of my speeches and things like that are from my lived experience. So I like to compare everything to sports. I love sports, and I love my Buffalo Bills. So I joined the Army at 17 years old, and I compare it kind of like being a athlete who, let's say that you want to go to the NFL, that starts very early in your life, right? Pop Warner football. You're kind of like conditioned football. So I joined the Army at 17 years old, still in high school, in a delayed entry program. And as soon as I graduated high school, I was in the Army 2 weeks later. I had no time really to be a civilian. So I graduated high school late. I graduated high school in August of 2005. In September, I was at MEPS, a right hand in the air, taking an oath to protect my country from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And then I went to Iraq when I was 19 years old. I joined as a scout because when I was choosing my job, my MOS, military occupational specialty, I said, man, I want to fight because what's the use in going to war without coming back with a story to tell? Now that's just me, high adrenaline and all that good stuff, but I wanted to come back with a story to tell. So using my sports analogy, you prepare for this and you train for this your entire life. And we trained hard to go to Iraq. And then when I got back, it was just over. It was just over. I got shot by a sniper and it was over. But combat as an adult was literally the only thing that I knew. And because of where I'm from Rochester, New York, it's hood, man. You know, I'm from 843 Avenue D on the corner of Hudson and Avenue D, duh. But you know, when you see that and you're surrounded in it, you really don't know anything else, right? And so combat is what I wanted to go back to when I got out of the military. Now, how can you do that? A lot of veterans, if they don't do 20 years in the military, they get out and then they become police officers, right? Or they work for the federal government in any capacity. When I got out, I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to be SWAT because I wanted to be more than just a regular street cop. I wanted to be SWAT because as a scout, I deployed during a troop surge in 2006. And man, that fighting was hard, hard, hard. You know what I'm saying? And then we were dodging EFPs, this new type of IED that came out, and it was installed. It was just in my brain because when I deployed, I drove lead truck, right? Dodging these EFPs. And there's no greater feeling, at least to me, than driving at night with your nods on and you don't know if you're going to see the sun at 3 a.m. And it was a big adrenaline rush for me. That adrenaline rush, it got infused into my soul. And so when I got back, I wanted to feel that again. And I'm going to tell you a little story here. The reason that I loved it is the first time I ever felt respect. I graduated from Fort Knox in 2006, and I was at the airport on the way to Fort Carson, and I was at a Chili's, and I went to go pay for my meal, and the waiter said, "No, somebody's already paid for your meal." And I looked over, and this guy came over to me. He shook my hand, and he said, "Thank you for your service. Godspeed." Now, I'm an 18-year-old kid I'm 18 years old. I just graduated basic training and I'm from the hood. Don't nobody respect us there. And so I had my Class A's on. He saw me with my Class A's and he thought enough about me to pay for my meal and shake my hand. And that's stuff like that, man. It makes you walk with your chest out a little bit. You know, it's like, I am somebody. And it's because I had that uniform on and I had that American flag on my shoulder. And then I earned this Purple Heart. I got shot by a sniper in Iraq. Now I got a combat patch. Now I'm a Purple Heart veteran. And man, the respect, I got shot when I was 20 years old. And so now the respect is just going up and up and up and up. And then I had nothing when I got out. So I wanted to go back to combat really because think about this. When I deployed to Iraq during the surge, there was these group of contractors out there called Blackwater. And we couldn't talk to them. And there's a lot of stuff about Blackwater in the news. I don't pay attention to it. I talked to some of them dudes, man. And when I was over there, and I don't know the politics behind it or whatever. But think about this, right? A lot of veterans, they leave their families as civilians and then they become contractors and they go back to combat. A couple months ago, I seen some soldiers who they were going to Gaza to help deliver food and give aid to the people that needed help in Gaza. Now think about, you got your family, you served maybe 20 years in the military, and now you decide, well, I still have that itch a little bit. It's a little bitty itch that you still want to scratch in the way back in your brain. You still want to scratch that itch. Go back to combat. I'm going to be a civilian contractor and go back to combat. Now, what I want to do here is get into my blog on Psychology Today. With these blog posts, we have to do some research, kind of like being in college again. When I was going through my MBA, you have to do some research and do your references and stuff like that. So I talk about that itch, and I actually wrote a song about it called The Itch. But the resource that I used here is from a 2014 research paper, and it's about Stockholm Syndrome. Now, Stockholm Syndrome is like basically when you fall in love with your kidnapper. Now, what I use in my Psychology Today blog post says, according to a 2014 research paper, common symptoms of Stockholm syndrome include victim having positive feelings toward the abuser, victim having negative feelings toward family, friends, or authorities. Man, it felt like I was kidnapped by combat and I fell in love with it. And I wanted to go back, mainly because that's where my friends were. And so if you're addicted to combat, how can you find little small ways to scratch that itch? What you can do, tell your story. I read books about combat. A great book that I just picked up is this book here, American Soldier by General Tommy Franks. and just I'm reading about combat, reading about his story, how he was, going from Oklahoma to Texas to getting his positions in the military, getting deployed by President Bush during the time. Then there's another great book that I have. It's a show that you've seen on HBO, and hopefully my show with my guys will be modeled after this, Band of Brothers. Love it. Love it, love it. Easy company. Love it. But it's a book about the 101st Airborne during World War II. But you could tell your story just like I did, and I have a book. It's called Cavalry, available on Amazon. I self-published, but I'm going to get into some portions of the book where I talk about me being addicted to combat. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from my chapter. It's called R&R, and if you do have my book, which you should, and if you don't, go ahead and get it. Available on Amazon. Now, this is from the book, this is from the chapter R&R, and if you don't know what R&R is, it stands for rest and relaxation. This is when I went home during my deployment during the surge. And if you have my book, let's read along together. It's on page 233. Here we go. I was thinking about the Bird Gang. Would White be okay driving my truck in the lead again? Are the guys getting attacked right now? My ear was healed by now, but I touched it as I remembered the mortar attack outside the gym. A small part of me wanted to be in Iraq because that's where my friends were. Now, what I'm talking about is being back home from the war, a 2-week vacation from the war with my family and my friends. But in my mind, I want to be back in combat because that's where my friends were. Like I said earlier, I drove lead truck during the most dangerous time of the war, dodging these new IEDs called EFPs. Now my friend, in the book, I called him White, but his real name is Brown. I didn't want my friend to get blown up and die. He had a wife, he had kids. I didn't have anything at the time. I still don't have kids. And at the time, I wanted to be back in combat because that's where all of my friends were. And in our brain, man, we develop these bonds that are so tight. I would rather go through hell with my brothers than being home with my family during R&R. All right, I'm going to continue because when I got back to Iraq, I wrote about that as well. This is from the chapter called Back in Iraq in my book, Cavalry, available on Amazon, that you should have. And if you don't have it, it'll be a perfect Veterans Day gift for your veteran and your family. Now, I'm going to go to page, where am I at? 241 in my book. We took the usual route to the combat outpost. It was weird how normal it was, driving on the roads in Iraq. I had an odd euphoria behind the wheel. Things felt normal in this weird, erotic way. Being back home with my family was nice, but everything felt so safe. I knew when I was driving down the road that nothing was going to explode. I knew that there would be no random pop shots while walking down the street. I had this weird itch to get back to the danger. It felt like home to me. And it did. Now, let's talk about what I tried to do what I wanted to do when I got home, but I couldn't. I wanted to be back in the fight, right? I wanted to be SWAT, and I'm smart now. I got degrees. I got all this stuff. I wanted to be in the FBI. I wanted to be in the CIA. I wanted to go on classified missions. Put me where the enemy is so I could take them out, because it was such a big adrenaline rush to me, and I didn't feel like I could get it anywhere else. But I couldn't do it, right? I was here, I was here. I wanted to be here, but this gap, I couldn't close the gap. And what ended up happening between this gap was opioid addiction, alcohol addiction, a failed suicide attempt. And then I just didn't know how to do it. There are not many resources in Rochester. It's all hood. And then, I moved down here to Atlanta, and that dream, it got further and further away from me. It got out of my grasp. That's why I'm so glad now that the veterans that are getting out now have the resources that I didn't have back in 2010. Because if those resources were there back to me in 2010, man, I'd be somewhere across the globe taking out enemies that, y'all didn't even know we had. Because that's what I wanted to do. That's kind of what I still want to do, but I can't because I'm almost 40 and I'm a disabled old scout. I can't do that anymore. Now, let's go back into my blog here on Psychology Today. I have two sources on this in this blog post. The second one, according to the Treatment Improvement Protocol, numbing is a biological process whereby emotions are detached from thoughts, behaviors, and memories. This happened to me when I was medically discharged from the Army in 2010. One thing about combat, kind of like the soldier that I talked about earlier in the Hurt Locker, learning how to kill at 18 years old, it numbs you. It numbs your feelings, it numbs your emotions. And I was numb to everything when I got back in 2010. Taking a life ain't nothing. You know what I'm saying? According to a combat soldier, taking a life ain't nothing. You can take a life and then eat your breakfast right next to the dead body. Because you're numb to everything. And it was like, hey, I want to do this. This is the only thing I know. And I was kind of detached from my emotions and things like that. It took a long time for me to get those back. So, I'm married now. If you on my YouTube page, you'll see my American Dream wedding, and I'm crying when I propose. Pretty, will you marry me? Because I was so happy to be married and actually feel something towards somebody again. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so using my sports analogy, to feel close to combat, you could do things like write your books, like I did. Tell your story, or you could speak. You don't have to, speak like I do. But this is why I started my business here, Lion Speaking Agency, to tell stories of veterans and veterans who served in combat and just don't know how to tell their story and things like that. But most importantly, to tell your story or to hear stories about those veterans who maybe feel addicted to combat. What you should do is go to www.dkendrickjr.com, see what I got going on, or if you have a loved one, or if you are a veteran who still feels kind of addicted to combat, leave me a comment down below. Once again, visit me at www.dkendrickjr.com. Send me a message. Let's talk about me talking for you.